All right. Welcome holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers. Again, welcome holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers. We are in the second chapter. We're in the second chapter, the 16th Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yeshua, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Nivrai, the evil inclination, hatred of other people, remove a person from this world. So we've been speaking for the last number of weeks this idea about the Ivrai, about jealousy in general, and we've been going through the Rabbeinu Yonah. There, Rabbeinu Yonah says the person is not happy with what they have. They're jealous, right? They're jealous of the friend, whatever they may have. Better spouse, better kids, better money, more money, whatever it is. And as the experts of nature would tell us, person who desires all the friend has contaminates a person's thoughts. Constantly, they're going to think about these things. It's going to bother them, right? Basically, make them jealous, and essentially, they're jealous of things that they don't have. Right? Again, it's going to take them out of this world. Jealousy over here, they're never happy. Right? The Mishnah later, get there one day, I don't know when. The Mishnah later says, who is happy? Miu Asher, who is considered wealthy, and it says, the Mishnah says, someone who is happy with his lot. Right? So essentially, we mentioned many times also that essentially what I have over here is essentially that a person, if they're jealous, right? If they're jealous of what someone has, what does it show? What does it show beyond the shadow of a doubt? It shows they are not happy what they have. It shows really that it's a lack of emunah, right? The lack of faith and belief in God. They say life is unfair. How can this be? Right? Why is God do this to me? Someone has this, someone has that, and you feel like you're lacking, right? But essentially, as we said before, if a person's wealthy, that's a test. Are you going to help others? Are you going to be haughty? Are you going to be conceited? Right? Or if you're poor, right? If you're poor, are you going to be thankful for what you have? Right? So people say, well, that's harder because you don't have very much. Okay. So here in Israel, very interesting. A lot of people in the same boat, right? Some have a little bit more, some less. So everyone's in the same boat. When it comes to when it comes to money, it's a big miracle how anyone survives. In general, I'm not saying there are people making good money, but I guess if you're in high tech, you're making very good money. Everything else, okay, you make less money, they're more expenses, whatever it may be, very good, right? So there's a big difference outside of Israel, right? Because outside of Israel, the difference between people that have and don't have, it's not like everyone's in the same boat. I mean, it's very clear. People, bigger houses, go on fancy vacations, they make more money. A big difference, right? Very, very big difference. Now, that being said, that's a bigger trial. That would be a bigger trial because the difference is so glaring. Yeah. So someone who doesn't have, right? Someone who doesn't have, they feel bad. They could be, saying things against this other person. Why do they have this? Why do they have that? And let's say even, they made money illegally. Let's say. Yeah, no question. Do you have to turn them in or not? Again, 100% if you know. Okay, it's not really the topic. The point is, you'll say it's unfair, right? I hear this all the time, right? Especially when it comes to conversion. It's not fair. This person has it easier. I should have to suffer this much. They're discriminating against me. Let's say it's true. Let's say, for argument's sake, you have all these problems, right? You can't move, right? Moving's a problem. Dealing with the rabbi is a problem. Dealing with the community is a problem. Let's say. And I hear this all the time. Yeah. Some people it's easier, some people it takes longer, some people take shorter. But the common denominator is that what does it do? What does it do for some people? Makes them bitter. Now, I can understand. They want to convert yesterday. They want it easier. Okay. Right? I'm not saying that, I can't understand. But it's a trial like anything else. But again, that's not even the point. Right? That's not even the point here. The point is, how do I look at the world? That's the point. How am I looking at the world? Yeah. So I spoke to someone the other night, last week. The person says, let's say, you go through a hard time, whatever it may be. Yeah. And you got to take, let's say it's a money, right? Let's say it's livelihood wise. You got to take a hit. Whatever reason. Let's say you did it to yourself. I don't know. Whatever it is. You got to take a hit. So the person says, that's the way they look at it. I'm saying everyone's got to take it this way. So the person said you can't look in the past. Can't look in reverse. Right? Which is true. My mother would say, if you live in the past, you have no future. Okay. But whatever it is, again, even the bad decision, it was a stupid decision, whatever it may be, if you harp on it and you think about it too much, what's going to happen? Depression. Could have done this, that should have happened, something else should have happened, anything should have happened. Right? But at the end of the day, you look at it, you can't look backwards. Right? That's the way this person looked at it. He said, you can't, I'm not saying it's the wrong way to look at it. I'm not sure everyone's going to look at it that way, but to look in it is true. If you look in the past, you're harping on the past, it's painful. Sometimes you have to deal with the past anyway if you don't want to, but painful. Okay. Well, the question, we've been looking at this from, I guess, some different angles, similar angles, but bottom line is over here is the fact that if a person looking and sticking their nose in someone else's business and they think they have it better, well, let's say they do. So what? What does that have to do with you? Yeah. What in the world does that have to do with you? You have to live your own life. You got your own challenges. I didn't know what goes on behind closed doors in their house. You have no idea. All right. We mentioned this many times. You have no idea. They can have money and this and that, but they have nothing. They can have nothing. Kids are on drugs, problem with their spouse, family. They can have million things going on. And let's say it's not. Let's say everything is smooth. Okay, you're still not looking at what someone else has. But what are we going to focus on here? What's the purpose of my life? This is what we're going to focus on. What is the purpose of my life? So when I'm at a learning institution, guy sitting learning all day, not making very much money, right? Either getting, either the wife's helping to support, in-laws helping to support, whatever it is, right? So I ask the fundamental question. I give a schmooze every once in a while, right? I give him what's their schmooze, so to speak, every once in a while. And one of the schmooze I gave was on this. So I asked, I said, this. So when I started out, I said, this is going to be a theoretical question. I'm not looking for answers, right? I'll tell you what my answer is, but I'm not looking for answers. Right? The question is, why do people sit and learn? Or why is it even an ideal to sit and learn full time after you're married? Right? After you first married. Most people, have been learning their whole lives, very good. So what's the normal thing? You get married, you learn however many years, right? Then eventually you get a job, right? Whatever, you're gonna do to support the family gets bigger, whatever it is, the Orthodox community, people, try and sit as long as they can, right? Before they'll go out and do whatever they're gonna do. But I asked the question, why do people sit and learn in general? So I get all these strange, very strange books. What are you, an idiot? What are you talking about? What do you want to sit and learn? Right? That's what people do. Right? That's what people do. They sit and learn. Very good. Yeah. They sit and learn. Okay. Yeah. What's the problem? Right? What is the issue? Just come around. What's the issue? Now, simple thing is, a person may say, Of course you sit and learn. That's what you do. That's what you do after you're married. In Hasidic communities, they learn maybe a couple of years, maybe a best. They go to work. Okay. No learning 7, 8, 10 years, right? As long as possible. That's what they do. Right? I'm not saying you don't have necessarily long-term learners in Hasidic communities. You can. I'm not going to say none, but it's not so, I would say not so common. No, we're going to learn for probably a couple of years and that's it. Okay. But so I got all these like strange looks. I'm like, this is a very simple question. Why do people sit and learn? Very simple question. They thought like, I fell off the moon. I came from a different planet. So I said, all right, let me ask another question. Is a person, or a number of questions, is a person sitting and learning just because that's what they're supposed to do? Are they doing it because they want to have a good name? They wanted to get, a nice match, so to speak, get supported for a number of years, right? They do it in name only, so to speak. There are cases, unfortunately, we had a number of stories where a person gets married and, the woman, the family thinks they're getting this, top guy, a great learner, this and that. It's all a lie. It's all a facade. It's all a facade. Guy doesn't get up so much, pray in the morning, and he comes and he goes, very nonchalant. They get hoodwinked. That's a major problem. There's a major trust issue over here because the person was built up to be something that, that the person wasn't. Because obviously, somebody like that, you're going to get a different type of match. Which, again, I'm not going into that aspect of it. But the point, is, and I think it's a fundamental question: why do I do what I do? Right? Why do we live our lives the way we do? You'll tell me, what do you mean? The Torah says so. All right. Who gave the Torah? God gave the Torah. Right? We're going to commemorate that tomorrow night. Right? The holiday of Shavuot is very good. Right? God gave the Torah. Very good. He knows what we have to do, what's permissible. It's not permissible. We got rabbinic law. It's given at the same time. Right? Got to listen to what the rabbis say. Very good. So I have to keep the Torah to the best of my ability. So in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, oh, Bashamayim, it's not in heaven. The Torah's not in heaven. Very good. And if the Torah would be in heaven, commentaries say you'd have to try and get it. You'd have to try and acquire. It's one of the hardest things to acquire. The Gemara says 3 things very hard to acquire: Torah, Olam Haba, and Eretz Yisrael. Right? 3 very hard things to acquire. Now, the first Mishna in Pirke Avos says the world stands on Torah. Now, obviously, Torah is the fundamental thing here. Right? It's definitely the most important thing. There's no question, unless it's saving a life or whatever. Certain things will trump it in order that, you stop learning that. That's for sure. Only a handful of things when, when you're learning. But that's okay. So we said before, nothing more important. Nothing more important than learning Torah. Very good. So the essence of Torah is, I got to do what the boss says. I got to do whatever the boss says to the best of my ability. Now, is that going to be easy? Is that going to be a cakewalk? No. We have an evil inclination, right? We're going to speak about that maybe in the next coming weeks. All right? That's the next part of the mission. The evil inclination takes a person out of this world. We have an evil inclination. Okay. We don't always want to do the right thing. We have bad character traits. We don't necessarily want to change. We don't want to learn Musar. Right? We got a lot of things stacked against us. Okay. So if the Torah is true, and I understand the Torah is true, at the highest level, don't I have to uphold it? Yes. Don't I have to keep it to the best of my ability? Yes. But what's the purpose of doing it? So you tell me the purpose is you're doing what the king says. Or let's say better, the King of Kings. You're doing what the King of Kings says. Okay. Now, if you're doing what the King of Kings says, there are better ways to do it. There are worse ways to do it. Right? Some people do what the king says, do what the King of Kings says, and they give a lip service. They do it. They go to pray, they keep kosher, they keep Shabbos, they keep other things, very good. But what happens? They get lazy, right? They don't always do what they're supposed to do, don't always think what they're supposed to think. The Torah is the foundation. The Torah is supposed to change us. Now, if the Torah is supposed to change us, even though we have an evil inclination, so Gemara says you got antidotes, right? That's Torah, but you need God to help you. Very good. So I got the antidote. The antidote alone is not going to help me overcome the evil inclination, right? But I need God's help. Very good. Now, if I'm obligated to do what God says, to do what the King of Kings says, if I'm obligated, then I have to do it to the best of my ability. Can't get lazy. Can't rely on your laurels, right? Not about downtime. Over here, I get this question all the time. All the time. My head's going to explode. Yeah? I can't learn anymore. Right? My head's going to explode. Okay. So some people would say learn something lighter. Yeah, instead of something heavy. Okay. If someone says I can't learn, right? I have to turn my mind off. Again, you have to have fixed time to learn. That fixed time to learn for anybody has to be that, unless like there's a fire in your house or something else going on of like dire importance, that's it. It's like you're dead to the world. One of the Torah giants, the last generation, Margolius, he was a businessman. He was Rabbi Ephraim Margolius. He was a businessman, and he told his wife, he said, I learn every day till 2:00. Nobody's allowed to disturb me. Until 2:00 is like I'm dead to the world. So one day, 2 merchants come in, and his wife said, he can't be disturbed. So, they try and convince her how important it is. She said he can't be disturbed until 2:00. So they said, listen, he's got an opportunity to make tens of thousands of rubles right now. In 5 minutes, all it's going to take is 5 minutes. Yeah? But I don't think it would be true even for 5 minutes. For 5 minutes, you think he would disagree? She's kind of in a quandary. But she said, that's what he said. You can't disturb him. And they left. So he comes out from learning at 2:00. And his wife said, you'll never believe what happened. 2 guys come in. They said they have an unbelievable business deal for you. You're going to make tens of thousands of rubles. I couldn't disturb you. Right? You told me not to disturb you. So Rabbi Margolius was dancing. He's like, what are you dancing about? And he said, I can't believe God himself thinks my Torah learning's worth tens of thousands of rubles. Yeah. Could have made amends in a short amount of time. He said, I can't believe God thinks that's how much my Torah learning's worth. So, when a person learns, and even let's say, a person listening to class on their phone, okay. Even if you're listening on the phone or whatever device, anything else should matter. You don't want to get distracted. Well, it's one big distraction. Get distracted from this, distracted from that, other things, okay. Now, based on that, when a person learns, nothing else matters. Nothing else should matter. And the purpose of Torah is, even if it's things that are not so practical. Yeah, we have no idea the power of what that Torah is. So I tell people, okay, you got to learn practical things. I think people should learn practical things. Certainly, a person wants to convert, most of the things have to be practical. Not that you can't learn things that are more philosophical. You can, right? Most of the person should learn. Chumash, a person should learn, meaning the Torah portion of the week. Right? However much time a person has. That's applying more to men to women, but women also have to learn. But, the most important thing besides all that is to learn things you enjoy. Because you got to remember, downtime. What could downtime mean? Watch videos, watch movies. A person watches sporting events, different things. Some of them, the only transgression is it's just a waste of time when you could have been learning, right? Or even if you weren't going to learn. Other things are worse. Vulgarity, let's say by movies, immorality, other things, even in cartoons. Right? Spoken about this many times also. Even cartoons. They don't give off good values at all. Right? It's like, come on, what's wrong with a cartoon? Be very simple. Very simple and I'm not even talking, more modern, cartoons, like like The Simpsons or whatever, back in the day. Pretty big when I was growing up. When I was no more than a teenager anyway. Whatever. The values are bad. Values are horrific. Now again, a person can say, we'll get to the point here. A person can say, but I can't concentrate all the time. I can't focus all the time. Okay. So I tell people that you got to learn and you got to dive into things you enjoy. They're also going to give you knowledge. Because like someone once told me, about watching, cable TV back in the day. They said, listen, you can get a lot of good education on TV, on cable, you can watch the History Channel. I said, okay, that's great. I said, how often do you watch the History Channel? Do you watch Doctor Who? Right? People say back in the day, watch Doctor Who. Okay. How many people are watching Doctor Who today? Yeah. Then the first thing a person got, when they're flipping channels, they say, oh, let's see, back things of Doctor Who. Or even when it was big back in the day. Okay. Now, a person has to remember, not so easy, because desire destroys us. A person has to remember what I'm living for, what the purpose of my life is. My purpose is in this world to be close to God. That's my purpose, right? For Jew or non-Jew, right? We're not going to discriminate here. That is my purpose. Nothing in between. Now, at the same time, right? At the same time, I would say that even though that's the purpose, you got to remember, anytime a person sins, whatever they do, we all sin, right? As King Solomon says, no one's been in this world that hasn't sinned, even though there are only a handful of people, the Gemara says, that died because Adam and Eve ate from the tree, right? Only a handful of people. Most people sin. Okay. Now, this is going to be very depressing because when a person realizes any type of sin, what a person does, they see something they shouldn't see. They say something they shouldn't say. They think something they shouldn't think, even though normally we say, Devarim Shabalev Ain't Devarim, words of my heart don't matter. Certain things, either by idolatry or immorality, that if I thought such a thing, even if I didn't say it, you might transgress. Right? If a person, God forbid, let's say by idolatry, a person in their mind, they don't verbalize it, they don't bow down to it at this point. They say in their mind, short little fat guy, Mr. Buddha himself, they say that Buddha is their God. Now you got to say, what did they do wrong? Seemingly they didn't do anything wrong. Why not? Why didn't they do anything wrong? They didn't say anything. They didn't verbalize it. All they did was think it. Okay. So if you thought it, commentary say, no, you thought it, that's forbidden. Why is it forbidden? Because 99% of the time we say no, 99% of the time we say whatever's in my mind doesn't matter. And it shouldn't matter. Why do I over here say it matters? Because it's idolatry. Idolatry, we're extremely stringent. By immorality, we're very stringent. Right? As well. Now, the purpose of Torah is what? Is to strengthen me. That every time I do a mitzvah, as the Pirke Avos says, mitzvah goreres mitzvah, vera goreres avera. When I do a mitzvah, causes me to do other mitzvahs. When you transgress, God forbid, cause you to transgress other things. Right? It's a slippery slope. So we go up and down all the time. Right? We go up and down all the time. Now, that being the case, if I do the right thing, I strengthen the body and the soul. Yeah, I sanctify the body and the soul. I make the soul stronger. If I do the wrong thing, yeah, I debase the body, I debase the soul. So there's a constant battle. We're going to speak about this quite a bit upcoming week. There's a constant battle between body and soul. Body, why don't you go after the physical? And the body is a major advantage. As we mentioned before, the Chos above says that when a person's born, right, we're created from the dirt of the four corners of the earth. When a person's born, what happens? All it wants is physical pleasure. That's all it wants. Feed me, change me, let me walk around, let me, enjoy life, whatever. Right? From the time the person's born. Now, the soul goes into the body either at the time of conception or at the time when the baby's born. It's a difference of opinion. In either case, the soul's at a major disadvantage now. Because the soul comes not from this world. So the body gets stronger, stronger, bigger, stronger, etc. So the body itself, major advantage. The Bible says, you're right. It's got a major advantage, except for one thing. Where does the soul come from? The soul comes from God. Soul is spiritual. Yeah. Torah can make the soul stronger. Little bit of light, push away a lot of darkness. Now, if that's true, and I do the right thing, whether I understand it more or less or whatever, it doesn't matter. The fact is, strengthens the body and the soul. So, imagine on, the holiday of Sukkot, right? During that time in the service, taking your lulav, esrog, right? Taking your lemon on steroids, your esrog, you're taking your willows, you're taking your myrtle leaves. And during the service, at a certain point, just shaking it like this, you're shaking it like that, you're shaking it behind you. Again, the more you understand what you're doing, obviously better. But in this case, even you understand very little, let's say. You look around and see people the same thing, people more intention, less intention, whatever. It's comes along, God says, doesn't matter, this is what you have to do. This is going to strengthen your bond between me and you. Now, again, if I understand it more, forget about Kabbalah. If I understand it more, I'll have more meaning out of it. Very good. Even if I understand it at a base level, right? Every holiday, obviously, you have to learn about the mitzvahs of the holiday. You have to learn what's behind the holiday. There's a special spiritual influence of every holiday. So a person can say, I didn't get as much out of it. I want to get it back. Can't get it back. It's over, right? Let's say the holiday ends. And the person realized they didn't get enough out of it or whatever it is. Can't get it back. The only thing you can do is strengthen yourself till the next time it comes around. Another year later. Yeah, then we're going through all kinds of things anyway, so not so easy. But still, every holiday, every Shabbos has a spiritual influence. Now the question is, what do I do with it? Do I utilize it, make it tremendously strong? Do I waste it? Do I do things in the middle? Whatever it is. So keep in mind, the whole point here is that when I do the right thing, even if I want to do the right thing, it's also good. But when I do the right thing, I'm taking 2 steps forward. When I do the wrong thing, I'm taking 2 steps backwards. So anytime a person does anything wrong, it could be catastrophic. We probably do thousands of things wrong during the day. Hopefully not. Yeah. So even if we're doing good things, remember, if I took 2 steps backwards, I got to take 2 steps forward to get to 0. Not to be positive, to get to 0. Right? So you're going to say, inevitably we sin. Right. But if you think about it, it's a very scary proposition. Don't you know what it's going to do to yourself? What it possibly can do to others, right? Bad character traits, you affect people in a negative way, right? Let's say. So yeah, you got to repent, you got to work on them. Life is hard. Life 100% is hard. Okay. So you say, I need a balance, right? True. We need a balance over here. But if the purpose is, and we understand, that God gave the Torah, and He wants me to keep it to the best of my ability. If I understand that at a base level, how is it possible ever to go against it? If I understand it in my mind, Now you can tell me, okay, there's a mind-to-heart disconnect. True. But if I understand the severity of what is out there and what I need to do and how I need to function, then how is it possible to sit? So says Rishulek Diskin, who has some memories of Rabbi Brisk, who became the rabbi of Jerusalem many years ago. He said, if the Torah wouldn't tell me that there were evil people, I could never imagine. I could never imagine there are evil people in the world. The Gemara speaks about evil people. The Torah speaks about evil people. Right? Now, I would have said, what do you mean? You don't know they're evil people? How do you not know they're evil people? Right? Or not just evil people, but people who sin. He said, how could it be? You go against your Father in heaven. What's the answer? What would my answer have been? I would have said, what are you talking about? Everyone's got an evil inclination. Some have stronger inclinations in this, others in that, others in other things. Okay. But if everybody has an evil inclination, then how is it everyone's going to be able to overcome it? We're going to get trapped by it. Yeah, so you're going to make boundaries within boundaries. So what would his answer be? Of course everyone's got an evil inclination. But then we just say, what's the antidote? The antidote is Torah. But the Gemara says, I need God to help me. Okay. So the more I'm steeped in Torah, then the more I learn. So we would say the less your ability to sin. Why? Because you're focused on learning. Now, that doesn't mean there's not an evil inclination when you're learning either. A person can mention something and then, they get off topic, start speaking about politics, other things. And then all of a sudden, then you realize 15 minutes went by, 20 minutes went by, and nothing to do with what you were learning. Right? Maybe even like a small tangent thing, and then all of a sudden 20 minutes get wasted. You're not learning, you're schmoozing. So it's an evil inclination in the study hall as well, or a synagogue, or wherever a person's learning. Okay. But to stay focused all the time, to keep my eye on the ball all the time, that's so easy. Why it's not so easy? We just said, you're put in this world. You're put in this world to toil. Very good. That's what we're here for. We're here to toil. We're here to struggle. God knows we have struggles. We have a lot of different struggles. Right? A lot of different struggles that aren't going to be easy. So you want to say, okay, I want to minimize the damage. Maybe only sin a little bit. You don't continue to sin. You try and nip it in the bud, so to speak. But what happens? What eventually happens is that the evil inclination breaks you down. The evil inclination makes you weaker. The evil inclination will tell you, come on, most people aren't learning now anyway. Most people don't even know the Aleph Beis. Most people don't know this. So, okay, we'll cut you some slack. Go get something to eat. Go relax. Don't be so intense. That's evil inclination, right? So, a person becomes religious. Non-Jew comes to Torah. What do family members want to do? Cool them down. Want to just relax a little bit. Doesn't have to be so intense. You have to do all these laws. You're going to have to convert. And then they may throw at you when they see, let's say, a person's resolve is strong or stronger. What may they say? Really, they're going to look at you as a second-class citizen. Even if you convert, even if you go to the top, best rabbinical court in the world, they're still going to look down on you. Jews will look down on you. They won't really accept you, fully. You're going to have a lot of difficulty if you want to get remarried. I mean, a lot of things, which may be true. But it's the way the evil inclination put these ideas in your head, which you probably already had anyway, right? But now they make it stronger. As they see, you're never going to be able to keep it all. Really, it's going to be too hard for you. no one's going to really accept you. They good claims, the inclination, very good at what it does, doesn't need me to agree. Right? Extremely good at what it does. At the same time, it can break down a person's resolve. And the person says, yeah, really? Why should I do it? Or they just get weaker. They get weaker in their resolve to keep Torah mitzvahs. But that's what they want. These people want you to be more like them. That's their whole goal. Yeah. They'll be happy if you did a much more watered version, much more watered version. Right? If it's a much more watered, it's diluted, what you do, you keep it on a lower level, this and that, but you're still able to do other things with them. You go out with them, you hang out with them, whatever. They don't see a real difference, then they're not going to be threatened. But if they see, you don't even go out with them to eat. You won't even go with them to a disco. You won't go with them to a movie. You won't do these other things. Then it becomes real. Then it's like, oh, you've totally changed. You're not the same. You're boring to be around, right? But really, what do they want? They want you to be like you were. They want to break you down. They want the same old person they used to have before. Well, guess what? The person's gone. Long gone. Okay. At the same time, they're lacking over here. So they're going to put pressure. They're going to put pressure for you to be like them. Because another person does never want to be, they don't want to feel, like you can't do things with them. They don't want to be inconvenienced, so to speak. Why can't you do this? Not everyone really does that. Rabbis don't even do that. It'll bring you all kinds of, let's say, contradictory things that make no sense. But they'll think it does. And they'll put so much pressure on a person that what does the person really want? So you tell me the person really wants to be left alone. Okay. Yeah, but what does the person want? They want them to be like you. They want you to be like them. And they'll put all kinds of pressure to do it. Now, some people be strong enough, push them aside. Say, listen, this is the way I am. I'm not going to do these things anymore, whatever. And enough's enough. I'm not, it's not what you're doing. It's not the path you're going in and finish. Now they can decide. Okay, they'll give up. Let's say that'd be a good thing. They give up. So they know you can't be dealt with anymore. You've gone off the deep end, you're crazy or whatever, right? Been called a lot worse. Okay. So that's it. So you may have to cut off ties. Okay, it's not a bad thing. Right? Not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying you have to, but not necessarily a bad thing. But the pressure is enormous. And then a person may question and say, well, why am I doing all this? Right? Bad people tell me, religion should not break up families. And that is true. Shouldn't. And what's the answer though? The answer is if it's done in the right way, it won't. If someone, a Jew decides, a Jew doesn't really mean that much to them, they marry a non-Jew. Yeah, and they have a sibling. They won't go to the wedding. It's like, come on, you're like us. How can you do that? Nothing wrong with my spouse. That's being homophobic. That's this, that's that. And family put a lot of pressure. Family will put a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, the Torah says what it says. That's it. Right? Not much you can do. Can't turn the Torah into silly putty, right? Or into a pretzel. I don't know if people still use silly putty or not. Doesn't matter. Either the Torah is true and I have to keep it. I have to keep it to the highest level. That's what I have to do. Right? That's my obligation. Doesn't always look pretty. That's what you have to do. So someone will say, this is not what it should do. This is not what religion should do. You're right. But if we go back in the chain, generation by generation, And we're linking that chain that goes back to Mount Sinai. So we're reclaiming that link. We're taking that link and taking it back. They're taking that link and destroying it. So if you're linking a chain, goes back 3,000 years, you're not changing anything, you're reclaiming that link, right? You're attaching yourself to that link. They're the ones that broke it. They're the ones that destroyed it. They destroyed the link. Well, they don't look at it that way. They're like, I haven't changed, you've changed. Okay. Right? Very simple test. Yeah, very simple test you ask them, which they're not going to like this, but you say, you cannot answer but. Right? According to the Bible, whoever wrote it, doesn't matter. According to the Bible, is a Jew allowed to marry a non-Jew? Yes or no, no but. So if you're associated with the synagogue, you'll say no. But, no buts. Maybe tell me it's for that generation. Maybe only generation one that went into the land. Maybe this, maybe that. But the Torah says at least half a dozen times, you're not allowed to intermarry. What do you think? They were kidding? It was written by man? What do they mean? Someone told me you're a fanatic. I said, I know. But what's the answer? Give me an answer according, 5 books of Moses or Tanakh. The writings, the prophets, give me a Gemara I haven't heard of, or I haven't seen recently or whatever. You catch me on that. Okay. Well, show me. They're like, you're a fanatic. That's not an answer. Yeah, they don't have an answer. But that's fanatical. Why is it fanatical? If you believe in the Torah, and the Torah is true, and God says you're not allowed to intermarry, so what's fanatical? God says don't intermarry. God also says don't eat pig. Don't eat shellfish. God could be anti-pig or anti-shellfish. Good. Could be anti-non-Jews. Many things we say against non-Jews. Okay. Is it true or is it not true? And what's my obligation? This is the whole point. What is my obligation? So God gave the Torah Mount Sinai. What did he tell you? Do this, don't do that. Right? Pass it down, to all future generations. 613 commandments. He told us that's our obligation. Shut up and eat the matzah. I don't care if it goes down too hard. I don't care if you have to eat 35 pounds or 40 kilo of matzah in 35 seconds and you have to whistle Dixie. Who cares? That's what I told you to do. That's what you got to do. And you want to sleep late at night, you don't feel so great, you wake up in the morning, you got to go pray. If you're a guy, you got to go pray with the minyan unless you're really sick. Yeah? That's what you got to do. Yeah, I'm tired. And then, so what? Let's go pray later. Go find a minyan. I don't know. You got to pray. Don't make excuses. These are things you got to do. Torah is not, as we said before, Torah is not silly putty. Torah is not something you mess around with and you play with it. You want to change it. You don't want to change it. It feels good. It doesn't feel good. You do it. That's what you got to do. Now, sometimes will a person feel stronger in it? Yes. Sometimes a person will feel elevated? Yes. Some people feel like they can walk on air? Yes. They'll be inspired. And a lot of times, what can happen? A lot of times you don't feel so inspired. A lot of times you feel down. Why do you feel down? Because life beats you down. But says Reb Shulei Diskin, God gives you everything. He gives you everything. So why not think out every second of every day what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it, so you don't come to these things. So you don't come to, you don't come to depression, you don't feel like, oh, I don't have anything, and I failed at this, and I failed at that. It's very simple to do. We're very good at knocking ourselves down, destroying ourselves, giving ourselves tremendously low level or a total lack of self-esteem over here. Because some will say, God is so great and so powerful and so he knows everything backwards and forwards, from the beginning of time until now, then how can I go against him? And then a person will say, but I did, and I don't think, and I made this mistake, and I made that mistake. Okay. As someone asked me a while ago, right? A question comes up a lot, and that is, I've done this, I've done that, and I keep doing it, God's never going to forgive me. That's a defeatist attitude. Now, you got to figure out, this is a 3-step process. First, you got to figure out why you did it. What's causing you to do it? Right? Then, first of all, you got to stop it. Sorry, let's say better. First, you got to stop it. Second thing is, you got to figure out why you did it. And the third thing is, how am I going to stop doing it and what the triggers are? Maybe 4-step process. Yeah? What's the trigger? What triggers a person to do X, Y, or Z that goes against Torah? And then you got to figure out, if I'm in that situation, and you have to be in that situation, how in the world are you going to stop it? Okay, it's work. Right? It's a lot of work. But again, what do we start out with over here? What am I living for? I'm living to be the best Jew or non-Jew I can be. Right? King David says in the book of Psalms, Psalm 90, we're only here 70 years. If I have strength, 80 years. Everything over that in my language is a bonus. So we're not here that long. When you're younger, you think time goes by very slow. When you're older, you see time goes by very fast. Yeah? You can't stop it. The aging process starts when a person's born. When a person's born, right, the clock is ticking. How long they're going to be in this world? Some will be here longer, some will be here shorter. Like my Rebbe says, people die at all ages, so a person will repent. If everyone would die at the age of 70, let's say, they say, good, I got another 20 years. I got another 40 years. I got another 10 years, whatever it is. Yeah? So no one will repent. Because we saw before, the Mishna Pirke Avos said, you got to repent the day before you die. What's the obvious question? Who knows when they're going to die? Right? King Solomon says in Proverbs, we said over there, you don't know what today's going to bring. You know what tomorrow's going to bring. Very good. So if you don't know what today or tomorrow's going to bring, you better repent every day. Because you don't know. You know, person tomorrow, you think, okay, I'm going to get up, going to do this, whatever. You don't wake up, right? You don't wake up. That's it. You're not doing anything. Yeah, at least at that point. Yeah, your body's not doing anything. You're finished. How many people live their lives like this? Rabbi told me one of the first times I met him. He told me he was in his late 60s already. He goes, listen, I don't live in this world. I'm like, say what? He's like, yeah, I don't really live in this world. I'm already preparing for the next world. I'm like, who talks like that? Well, the world talks like that. So he brings down in Chumash, in his explanation on Chumash, and he says the Levim stop at the age of 50, not allowed to work in the temple after the age of 50. So he says, when a person hits 50, they start thinking about preparation for the next one. Kind of depressing, think about it. you know, already at the age of 50, you got to start thinking about the next one. Because again, what's the average lifespan? Is 70. We know people die younger than that. We know people die older than that. Okay. But a person always thinks they got more time until they find out, God forbid, they have a dread disease or something else happens. Okay, anyway, that's not the point. The point is, again, what am I living for? What's my purpose in life? Yeah, someone said learning full time, it's not just to get a good name. That was my point. Not just to get a good name. Not just, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. What is it, if a person learns 5, 6, 7, 8 years, let's say, after they're married, and they're learning full time, and they're learning a lot, and they're trying to reach higher spiritual levels and this and that, they look very different than someone who works every day. Yeah, and someone who has like an hour or two to learn, at best. They look different. Their houses look different. Kids are brought up in a different way. That's the power of Torah. I'm not saying everyone can do that. Okay. But the purpose is to make yourself a greater person, to help you reach your potential. And how do you reach your potential? By learning Torah. The more you learn Torah, right? Obviously, the harder the trials get, right? But the greater potential a person has, you have no idea. We have no idea what our potential is. None. So you can't rest on your laurels. You can't say, like an 8-year-old kid tells me once, he says, Rabbi, cut me some slack. I don't need to hear this. Musar, I'm holding better than 95% of world Jewry. Now, let's say he's right. Let's say he's right. I said, I don't think you're right, but let's say I would say you're right. Right? But who are you comparing to? 95% of world Jewry cannot read the owl page. They don't know nothing from nothing. What they think they know, they don't know. So like you're comparing yourself, you're comparing yourself to a cesspool. Beautiful. People holding nowhere, and you're holding better than them. That's great, but God's going to say you have higher potential than that. So that's already level, I agree. That's already level. You're not doing what everyone else does around you. Very good. That means you're not, that means God expects more. Right? So someone pipes up and he says, if I keep Shabbos, am I good? Someone says, if I keep kosher, am I good? And someone says, hey, what if I hold by this, kashrus supervision? He goes, oh no, he's dead. He's finished. Potential. So like ingrained in my head. I'll tell you a story. I see a bunch of questions. I'll deal with them. So the famous story with the Netziv, or the Talmud Tzvi Berlin. Yeah, it was the head of the yeshiva with Rav Chaim of Volozhin. Sorry, with Rav Chaim Brisker. Right, he took over after Rav Chaim of Volozhin, famous student of Vilna Gaon more than 350 years ago. The Netziv was a rambunctious kid. And brought a private. His parents got him, a private tutor, and he kept running away and doing this and doing that. So one night he overhears them talking. Overhears the parents talking. So we know this kid's 8, 9, 10, whatever it was. So we know what's going to be with this kid. He doesn't want to learn. He has no interest in learning. Okay, let's at least, try and find him a profession or something. If he's not going to learn, then, he's going to be productive in society, whatever. So the Netziv that night has a dream. He's got a dream. And he realizes he's being judged in the heavenly court. Now he's a kid. He's not an adult at this point. So you can ask a question, how can he get judged? He's a kid, right? He's not of age. Doesn't matter. Yeah, this is the dream he had. The dream was that he saw he was being judged in the heavenly court. So he hears his boss call, he hears his heavenly voice. Heavenly voice says, bring out all his mitzvahs. Bring all the mitzvahs he's done. Right? So he sees these trainloads of white angels come out. Yeah, some weaker, some stronger, depending on how he did the mitzvah. And they all come out, start going down on the scale. So one side, the scale starts to go way, 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 way down. You're starting to feel pretty good. A few more trainloads come out, very good. And then they stop. So the scale goes way down. Then here's another boss call, here's another heavenly voice. The other heavenly voice says, bring out all his transgressions. So now you see these black angels, some stronger, some weaker, looking to rip them to shreds. They all go down on the other side of the scale. So now the white angels were all the way in the bottom, and now they start to come up. And they start to come up, and now he's getting worried. Because it was like there are more black angels, let's say. So now the scale is almost even, right? Scale's like this going like this. And then here's another baskel. And then here's another heavenly voice. The other heavenly voice says, bring out all the books he was supposed to write. All of a sudden, these huge volumes come out. The Emek HaDavar, that was his commentary. That was his commentary on Chumash. Emek HaDavar comes out. Rumi Sadeh, one of his great works on the entire Talmud. These huge volumes come out, and they start going over to the side where the black angels are. And now he knows he's in serious trouble. He goes, wait! He goes, what are these books? Because I don't know what these books are. So here's the heavenly voice saying, these books go on the side of transgression right now. He's like, it's about to be ripped to shreds. He's like, why? Why do they go to the side of transgression? Why, what are these? These are the books. If you would have gone on the right path, these were the books you were supposed to write. But at the rate you're going right now, you're never going to write them. So they go on the side of transgression. At that point, the scale breaks, and he wakes up from the dream. That was his dream. After he has his dream, woke up in sweating buckets. He's like, Mom, Dad, tomorrow, let's go. Bring the Malamed. Bring me my teaching instructor. And after that, changed his life. After that, he learned, he became the great Netziv. But at the point where he was, he never would have gone there. He absolutely never would have gone there. Now, this is an amazing story because, as we said, none of us know what our real true potential is. When I heard this story many, many years ago, made a tremendous imprint. And the reason it made a tremendous imprint is is that if potential is limitless, we have no idea what we can accomplish. Not in learning, not in chesed, not in other, acts of loving kindness, in other things within Torah. We have no idea. We have no idea. We're very good at complaining. We're very good at saying this isn't fair, that's not fair, the other thing's not fair. But what about what I have to do? What about my obligation with me and God and everything else around? What about that? So it's not about, I'm only going to learn, after I'm married. Why am I going to learn? Because what everybody else does. Learn for a number of years, whatever it is. Give me a good name. Give me a good spouse. That's not why you're learning. The whole purpose of learning is to change. That's the purpose. It's to change for the better. Now again, we have an evil inclination, right? Sometimes Musar doesn't speak to us. We're stubborn. We don't want to change. Okay. But if you don't, then all the Torah you learn is worth nothing. Right? Now, someone's going to ask the $3 million question, but I'm the same person I was 2 years ago or 5 years ago. I wanted to take on certain things. I couldn't. I failed. I this, I that. Right? We come out of Yom Kippur feeling like, we're 100 feet tall. We want to change the world. But then after Sukkot, go back to being the same people. Okay. Right? I mean, it's not good. But at the same time, I got to strive for something. I want to change. I was just talking to someone right after Shabbos here. When someone asked me, all right, now I'll take questions after this. Someone asked me, what's your Rebbe? What is the Shtrim? What's going on? So I said there are two things. One is on the side of the secular Jews that they'll say, again, without getting into politics, they'll say every time, there's a missile attack here, and missiles get shot down, they'll say, we did it. The power of my hand. Right? The Torah says in the book of Deuteronomy, the power of my hand did all this. It's Patriot missiles, it's other things, now they're starting to knock things down by laser, a lot cheaper, whatever, okay. My Rebbe said many times that puts the Jewish people in Israel tremendous danger. Tremendous danger. Why? Because they're saying, it's not God over here, it's the might of my hand. It's the worst thing you can say. Absolute worst thing you can say. He says it puts the Jewish people in danger. I'll tell you the flip side. What if you get people, even ultra-Orthodox Jews, and they say, wow, it's an unbelievable miracle. 300 missiles, they don't do any damage. All these missiles, they don't do any damage, yeah? So everyone would say, okay, very good. You're recognizing it's a miracle, 100%. Yeah? Problem is, what'd you do now? God's doing these miracles for you. Did you do anything to change? Did you change the way you pray? Did you change the way you make blessings? Did the way you change how you interact with others? Did you change anything? Did you change anything? So the guy tells me, he's like, wow, you're caught on both sides. I said, right? I said, but we're talking about our side. And he said, it's a good point. Can't argue with that. It's a good point. What did you do to change? It's not like, it's a story. I'll tell one other story. As part of that, it's like, Rabbi Hetzkel Levenstein's in a taxi. He's one of the Torah giants of the last generation. He was the spiritual mentor in the Mir Yeshiva, right? In Mir in Poland, and then he came to Israel in Ponevezh, in the Yeshiva in Bnei Brak, one of the Yeshivas in Bnei Brak. He was in a taxi, and this taxi driver says, oh, Rabbi, let me tell you the story. Right? He's after the army. He and a bunch of his friends went to, went to Africa somewhere, whatever. And, it's what people do after they go in the army. They go to Thailand, they go other places, to travel. So all of a sudden, a snake, surrounded one of the guys. It was like squeezing the light out of him, squeezing the life out of him, squeezing. The guy's about to pass out. So they know what to do. They couldn't shoot him, couldn't do anything because they would have killed him in the process. And the only thing they know is Shema Yisrael. They said, hey, say Shema Yisrael. Say Shema Yisrael. So he said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And then this guy says being destroyed, almost be killed by the snake. All of a sudden, the snake lets go. Snake miraculously let go and went away. Yeah. Unbelievable miracle. What happened to this guy that happened to? He got back to Israel, went to yeshiva, became religious. That was it. So he's telling the story. Yeah, the guy came back to Israel, became religious, right? Because Rav Cheskel asked him, what happened to him? So they said, wait a minute, you were there. Weren't you there? He goes, yeah. So how come you didn't become religious? He said, Rabbi, it didn't happen to me. He said, "Did it happen to me?" You idiot! You saw it. You saw an open miracle. So you see, open miracles don't necessarily change people, but again, that's not even the point, right? Like my Rebbe said, you saw an open miracle, saved this person. This person changed. Very good. This person changed. You got the message. But if other people saw the miracle also, even if they admit it's an open miracle, but they don't change, yeah, that's why Rebbe would say, "What have people done to change? Anything." The way you make blessings, the way you deal with others, the way, I don't know, whatever you do in Torah mitzvahs, what did you change at all? It goes both ways. On the other hand, they're going to say, it's power in my hands, I did this, the army did that, very good. Yeah. So that is tremendously bad for us. Because once they start saying, it's the power of our hands, then it makes us look very bad. And then it puts the Jewish people in danger here. On the other hand, a person recognizes it's a miracle, which is a good thing. But if you say it's a miracle, then you got to change something. Because why? God can look down. I can put on my funny George Burns glass, my funny mustache. I'm playing God, and I look down and say, "Oh, look at all these people saying, 'Thank God, thank you for saving me,' whatever." And they go back to their lives. You go back to not changing anything. I'm sure that people have changed something. I hope. What he said, but my Rebbe said, if that's the case, and God does a miracle, and it's pretty open miracles. I mean, you can't deny all the missiles going nowhere, getting hit before they even do anything in Israeli airspace. The question is where it's gonna fall, and he had one to fall by the what do you call it, by the airport, right, a few weeks ago, snagging all these airlines like canceling all their flights. Okay. The reality is they don't fall anywhere. Fall in the middle of nowhere usually. Usually. Right? I mean, anyway, you don't want to take a chance. These missiles going a million miles a second anyway. You have no idea where they're going to fall, but still, you have to recognize it's a miracle. It's a good thing. But if you're going to recognize the miracle and you don't change, what could God easily say? What am I doing it for? I'll let nature take its course. Whatever happens, happens. I'm not going to interfere. You don't want that. For sure you don't want that. You need divine protection. Okay. But that's also what I'm living for. I want God to protect me. But God's not going to protect you in general if you don't get back. Why should he do that? Why in the world would he do that? You're going to think he's got a lot of compassion. Okay, up to a point. Up to a point, then you get fed up and say, "Listen, you didn't change this. You didn't change anything. So if you didn't change anything, why should I bother?" Good. Very good question. That's what Shavuos is. Shavuos is about renewal. It's about renewal our commitment to serve him and to serve him better, to the best of our ability. That's what we have to do. Do we always do it? No. A lot of times we fail, probably, but you can't give up. It's very easy to give up. But we're not learning and doing these things just because I want to have a good name. We're not learning and doing these things because I want to get the right marriage partner. You're doing it because that's going to make you the best you can be in God's eyes. That's going to help you reach your potential. That's why we're doing it, because it's going to change us. Torah is supposed to change us. If Torah is all about mental gymnastics, and I'm only learning like another philosophical thing, right, like another academic subject, it's not Torah anymore. Yeah, where everyone said people learn Torah like that. Yeah, he once told me they get something. They get some sort of merit. It's not called Talmud Torah. It's not called learning Torah. They get something for it. Yeah, they don't get nothing. They get something for it, but very small compared to what they should, right? So in general, the whole purpose is, like I do what he says, not only that, but I have to understand, to the best of my ability, why I'm doing it. And comes the holiday Shavuos, always at the right time. It's about renewal of Torah. It's about recommitment. Recommitment means that, I want to be better now. We got 4 or 5 months coming to the month of Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I want to commit. I want to take on things. I want to change. I want to show how much we want to change. All right, let me take some questions here. 1 second. Someone asked before. I want to get this. Is drinking coffee permitted or forbidden for Jews and non-Jews? if you're asking me, Jews hanging out with non-Jews and drinking coffee, yeah, it should be a problem. Not necessarily a conscious problem, right? But it would be a problem. It would be a problem in general because, Jews should be hanging out with non-Jews in general. If you want to ask me, drinking coffee in general, you can drink coffee, right? What's the problem? Right? As long as no kashrus issue. Certainly for a Jew and non-Jew can certainly drink. But coffee, what's the problem? You drink too much. Drink too many cups of coffee a day. It's bad, right? Cause a person to have high blood pressure, other things, right? It's been shown, but in moderation, right? Should be a problem. But Jews hanging out with non-Jews, whatever is a problem. That in general is a problem. Again, if you have to do it because of work or other things, okay. But in general, not something that should be done. In the book Eitz Chaim, it says, they don't want to study Torah with Shema for the sake of heaven. With fear and love of God, they that they redeem me and my children from exile. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but you're learning it. Again, it's not a question of getting money for it or not. That's not the issue. You're learning it for its own sake. You're not learning it just because I'm going to get reward. Yeah, it's a very high level, right? And not only that, Pirke Avos says, you got to learn Torah like you're not going to get reward, right? That's the highest level. Yeah, even if we wouldn't get reward, we're going to learn Torah anyway, right? And like someone once said to me, they said if I said, you're in serious trouble, in the next world they say, well, when I die, I'm only going 6 feet under. So I told them, I said, for your sake, I hope you're right. I said, because if I'm right, you're in serious trouble, right? You will be in serious trouble, right? If that is the case. So they say, well, can you tell me about life after death? And like, soundbite. So I sent them a link. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I told them, so the question was, what if you find out that the Torah is not true? You die like a dog, let's say. And the Torah is not true. Okay. So I said, even if that would be the case, and I would say there's still no better way to live. Still no better way to meaning life, the learning Torah. Right? The learning Torah. Even if you wouldn't get reward. That was my answer. The book Eitz Chaim is mentioned, the opinion means the Torah. Okay. Yeah, if you're talking about Kabbalah, I don't know why I'm looking at Kabbalah, but okay. Waste of time for most people, I would say. But okay. Experience the Torah means deep the secret of Sod. Yeah, it's Sod. Right? Opinion means the Torah means Kabbalah. Essentially, that's what it means. Right? I think it's a travesty in many ways. Some of these books have been translated where anybody can look at it. Yeah, I think it's really an absolute travesty because you got to be holding somewhere in the world. I hear people quote things all the time. I have no clue what any of this means. As we always say, you can't walk till you learn how to crawl, right? You can't run until you learn how to walk or crawl, and you can't understand, calculus, higher mathematics, if you don't understand algebra, trigonometry. So good. People know these things exist. Should they read them? No. Yeah, probably not holding there, a waste of time. Yeah, so the only thing I'm going to say about that, someone asks, for the black angel. So whatever we do, whatever action we do, we create angels. If it's a good action, so it's brought down, we create a white angel, purity. Now that angel may be strong, maybe a little bit weaker, depends how we did the mitzvah, right? So every time a person does the right thing, they create a white angel. A black angel, maybe like angels of destruction, when a person sins. So either you're creating white or black angels. Either white angels for doing good things, black angels for doing bad things. We don't see them, obviously. They will all come testify when a person dies or what a person did. And again, some of them will be stronger or weaker. They've heard the transgression, but they didn't really do it on purpose. They didn't really have intention or whatever. So the black angel won't look as strong. Or maybe it will, depending on what you did. But if a person did the right thing at a very high level, it could be a very strong white angel. It doesn't really matter, right? The point is they will testify for a person in the next world what you did. God's going to bring them up in front of them and say, okay, bring all those mitzvahs out. All these white angels come out. Bring all those transgressions out. right? All the black angels come out, very good. But then God's going to judge the person based on what the person did. Doesn't God know? Doesn't God know what we've done? Sure. He knows what everybody's done every second of every day. So if God knows, why does he have these angels? Because again, how do we, someone goes to court, in this world, even though probably courts are corrupt, not all of them, but maybe some of them are. So if a court is corrupt, what do I have? Well, sorry, if forget, let's say it's not corrupt. Yeah, what do we have? So what's the court going to do? They're going to evaluate the evidence. Yeah, they're going to say, okay, are there any witnesses? What do you have to say? Blah, blah, blah. So just like in this world, that's the way it is. You need witnesses, etc., in order to, in order to prove your case one way or the other. In the spiritual world, when a person dies, all the angels we created through our actions, whether good or bad, are going to testify. Again, God doesn't need them. But just like in this world, that's the way the court works, same way. Same way in the heavenly court. That's how it works. All right. Now, somebody asks, should we pray for anyone we feel has what we want? No. Why? That's the whole point. Why would a person pray for something someone else has? What are they lacking? What are they lacking? That's going to cause jealousy. They're going to be jealous of the other person. Someone says, all right, let's say someone causes damage. Let's say someone causes damage. Now, if a person asks God and prays to God to take care of that damage, yeah, i.e., you want God to take care of this person for whatever they did, whether it's against you, against a child, doesn't matter. Whatever the person did. We mentioned many times before, God's going to open your file first. Why is God open your file? Because I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, this person did something wrong, something terribly wrong, let's say. So your file gets open because you're telling God, so to speak, that God's not doing his job. That's what you're telling him. You're telling him God is not doing his job. So lack of emunah. That's for sure lack of emunah over here. So again, it's going to be hard. You want this person, no matter, whatever the person did that caused the person pain, right? You pray that you want God to take care of it. That's forbidden to do. But Meir had people bothering him, and he said, I want to pray that God should take care of them. And his wife Uriah said, you pray they repent. Yeah? So even if they got away with it, let's say, again, are we going to be on that level to pray they should repent? We want God to take care of justice. That's what we want. But why does your file get open first? Because you're saying to God, I want this person to be punished. You don't think God knows that? You don't think God's aware of that? Like, this really bothered me for a long time. Yeah. Why should your file be open first? Why in the world should your file be open first? God knows the person caused you damage. Very good. So comes along Mr. S, the accusing angel, right? The Satan, whatever you want to call him. And he's going to go in front of God and say, look, this person says this other person caused him damage. He wants you to take care of business. Right? So like, why should we listen to him? Why should we listen to this person? Let's see where this person's holding first. Let's see if they really have a claim or not. Maybe they're lying. If a child complains of abuse, you got to take it seriously, right? You have to look into it. Now, is it going to be all the time the child's right? No. The child can have a vendetta against somebody and say, oh, he abused me, right? Or she abused me, or whatever. A child can make that claim, doesn't mean it's true. 100% it doesn't mean it's true. But you have to check it out. 100% you have to check it out. You got to see if what the child's saying is true or not. You can't just take verbatim what the child says. There's no believability whatsoever, right? And they're not so bright either. For example, you do a test. You take a 5, 6-year-old. Maybe days change, I don't know. I don't know, you give him, you put on one side, 6, 7 cookies, Oreo, double stuff cookies, yeah, really, really enticing cookies. On the other hand, on the other side, you put $5,000 or $10,000. Now, you're talking about a young child here. Yeah, relatively young. What's the child going to choose? What's the child going to choose? Cookies. Doesn't know the value of money. He's going to choose cookies. Yeah. Now, that being said, it doesn't mean the child's lying here. The child, you have to investigate. You have to investigate. Could be the child is lying. Could be, but you got to take precautions. 100%, you have to take precautions. You don't take on the one hand, it's a child, right? So, child has no believability for anything in general. On the other hand, it's not something you want to mess around with either, but you have to investigate. 100%, you have to investigate, right? At the end of the day, someone who's caused this damage, use that person to get to us as a stick, right? Right? So yeah, if a person causes damage, in the ideal sense, we should pray for them to repent. 100%, we should pray for them to repent. Right? If a person prays that God should take care of them and punish them, their file is going to be open first. That you don't want. You can pray the person repents. Or in general, without having specific intention, that blessing of God's judgment that you think in general, that God takes care of everything he needs to take care of. Not that he's not, but that he shows true justice in the world. Right? That he can do. That he can do. As I read the first chapter, Shark going, yeah. Okay. Let me see further. Soak up the world like a dry sponge. And I didn't say soak up the world. I said Torah. Torah is not the world. Right? The world is, a tremendously bad place. The world is a place of distraction. Torah you gotta soak up. Even though you live in a messed up world that we messed up. Right? So Torah you gotta you gotta suck up as much as possible. That you have to do. And so when any free time person has, within reason, a person has to learn. Because the more you learn, the more, as we say, a little bit of Torah puts away a lot of darkness, right? In the physical world and within us as well. I gotta learn muster, I gotta be better, you gotta work harder, that's true, right? Torah itself has to be maximized. We're not here that long. You gotta learn as much as possible. The person has to continue to review, even go over things but just like keep going over it and over it and over it, right? And learning, that's what you got to do. That's what's going to make us different, right? That's going to make us who we need to be, right? It's going to push away darkness, right? That's going to push away darkness. Someone asks, should they ask God to open your file to see if that's true? Let's make very clear. You do not want God opening your file at any time except on Rosh Hashanah. God knows what you think. Now, if at any time, any point, you thought you might have negative thoughts about it, you can repent for that. But to ask God to open your file, never. You never, ever want that file open. Right? And not only that, you say, well, just check my heart and see what I was doing. That's like saying he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what you think. He knows what you think. It's one of the 13 principles of faith. God knows the thoughts of men. So why would you have to open up his file? Why would you have to reopen the file? It makes no sense. You wouldn't have to open up the file. Yeah? Right? Because God already knows. God already knows. What are you going to tell him? Open up my file to see what I really think. You don't think God already knows what you think? He knows. And let's say at that point you thought the wrong thing. Or you might have thought the wrong thing. Very good. So then you can repent. Then you can do tshuva. Very good, but you're not asking God to open up your file again. That's a mistake. That's a very serious mistake. You don't want to do that. Because then God's going to scrutinize you like no tomorrow. And who's gonna be able to uphold that? Who's going to be able to withstand that? Probably nobody. Right? So you don't want that file open. You definitely don't want that file open again. Someone soak up the word. All right, very good. So for saying soak up the word like a sponge, yeah, that's good idea. Right? Yeah. So misread that. That's true. Yeah. So soaking up God's word, yeah. That you want to soak up everything, put it into your life as best as possible. Not so easy. But that's what we should do. Right? 100%. That's what we should do. To the best of our ability. Yeah, any other questions? Life is complex. Life is complex. A lot of things we don't understand, that we go through, a lot of things, don't make so much sense. It doesn't matter. We got to do what we need to do, regardless of what's thrown our way. We got to change, right? We got to change at some level, right? Some people change more, some less, all kinds of different things, right? Um, again, keep in mind one thing. Whatever's happened in the past has happened. You got to let the past go. Not so easy. Right? Again, my Rebbe would say if you live in the past, you have no future. Right? It's got to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with. Sometimes it's very hard to deal with. Okay, person may have to go, to a psychologist, whatever. But if you don't deal with it, it always comes back. If you don't deal with it, it's always there. And when it's always there, it's a problem. Because you won't function properly. You won't be able to get over that. You have to be able to get over that. Right? 100%, you have to get over that. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy. Some people struggle with things all their lives. Okay. Some people maybe may need to be in constant therapy. That may be true, to deal with trauma, in other things, right? So first of all, it has to be dealt with. It has to be dealt with in the right way. And you have to learn how to live every day. Now, I know of a story of somebody that was uh whatever, someone was abused, and basically they've been in therapy a lot. Yeah. And their answer is sometimes it's better, sometimes it's harder. You know, every day is a different day. Okay. Right? Torah's not gonna will that. The outlook can help in how you see the world. Well, when a person, something major has happened, person's gonna need therapy for that. There's no question. They're gonna have to learn how to let go of some things, or if they can't necessarily let go, at least how to deal with them in a proper way where they can function. Because there are other people that don't function. Yeah, they just, abuse drugs and, do other things that don't function, because of that. And that's the whole point. Because if you don't deal with it and you live in the past, you won't function. You will not function. Right? I'm not cursing anyone. It's not going to happen. How are you going to deal with it? So sometimes it might be better. Sometimes it might be worse. Everyone according to whatever they need to go through. No one's going to say it's a cakewalk. No one by any stretch is going to say it's cakewalk. But you want to function. You want to function in society. A lot of people, unfortunately, these things happen. They can't deal with it. They commit suicide. It's just too hard. Too hard to live with it. Too hard to live with the pain. They can't live with the pain. Again, I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying if it doesn't get properly dealt with, and some things are very hard to deal with, yeah, maybe a person needs medication also, could be. But at the same time, if you don't deal with it, or you don't, get the right people to help, it can destroy you. 100%. 100% can destroy a person. Again, a person has to get the proper help. Yeah. It's not going to disappear by itself, right? Whatever a person's gone through, either you got to learn a lot of more through, you got to see a therapist, whatever it may be. It doesn't, it's not necessarily going to go away by itself because the person wills it to go away. But at the same time, you cannot let it control you. If it controls you, then there's nothing to, you won't be able to function properly. 100%. You can't live in the past. It has to be dealt with. 100% it has to be dealt with. Right? Some things are hard. I'm just pointing out. Again, I'm not a psychologist by any stretch, but it has to be dealt with at some level. You can't live in the past. You have to somehow try and get over it. Now, some things are easier to get over. Sorry. Some are extremely difficult to get over. Right? But the point is, you got to try and work and get over it. That's, as hard as it may be. Because if not, you have to struggle your whole life. It doesn't have to, if some people will be a struggle their whole life, it just may be because of what they've gone through. Right? I'm not saying, wow, if you struggle with your whole life, you're a loser. No. People go through tremendous trauma. Tremendous amount of trauma. Yeah. Some people never get over it. For some people, it's in check. In check means sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. Right? But for sure it has to be dealt with. Because if you don't deal with it and you suppress it, you're never over it, you're bitter, you're angry. Yeah. And if we had it from a God-driven world, why did you do this to me? And life's not fair. Right? But again, a person may need serious therapy for years. It's not a cop-out. It's not saying, just get over it. Live with it. People tell me, well, it's so easy to go through it, right? 100%. Right? You have to try and get over it. Otherwise, you can't function otherwise. Right? At the end of the day, we don't know why we go through these things. We don't know why. Could be our soul has to go through it for whatever reason. Okay. We have to deal with it though. It's part of life. People have different things to deal with. Right. So the question is, okay, you got a lot of different things going on. What does God want? He wants you to deal with them. He wants you to be a better person. God thinks it's going to make you a better person, even if we don't understand it. And we think it's like impossible, to go through, whatever it may be. He wants us to deal with it the best way possible. Help us reach potential. Right? There are things beneath the surface. Let's just say there are things beneath the surface that never would have come out if you didn't go through these things. In other words, someone has to go through certain things. Let's say someone went through a case of an abusive husband, let's say, abusive spouse. Yeah? Now, they may, at that point, it may have hurt in many ways, gone through many different things, right? But at the same time, they could give counsel to others what to look out for. How to react, what to do, this, that, if they're capable. But they never would have been capable if they didn't go through it. It's like a dormant gene. You got to squeeze the bottom of the toothpaste, right, in order to get it out. But you'll say, but I didn't want to go through it in the first place. Good. Nobody asked for these things. But sometimes it's a way for God to get something out of a person in order for that person to give over to others. Right? To help others in the same situation. Because you can't help others in the same situation if you yourself didn't necessarily go through it. Or you don't have a way how to do it. I'm not saying everyone has to go through everything in order to help other people go through it. Plenty of counselors did go through this. Therapists did go through these type of things. But they learned about it and how to deal with it and how to help others deal with it. Some people did. Some people know exactly what they're going through. Because they themselves went through it. So there are times, like I say, every single time, but there are a lot of times, therapists that deal with trauma have gone through trauma themselves. Right? It makes sense. So now they're giving over to others through techniques that they themselves went through and learned about. Well, they never would have done it. They never probably would have done it had they not gone through it themselves. But I'm not saying every case is like that. right? You can have, plenty of therapists ever went through this stuff, but they know how to deal with it. They know how to help others go through it. Okay. Yeah. And also, you have to have a lot of mazel, they say, like it's like anything. You buy a car, you gotta have mazel with that. The person has a therapist, you have to, be lucky to get a good therapist, that they can help you. It's not so simple. Let's say, just go to therapy. Well, therapist has to be on your wavelength, they have to know where you're coming from. They have to be also very good at what they do. There's therapists out there that I'm not gonna say they shouldn't be practicing. I'm not gonna go that far, right? But I would say that sometimes do more damage than not. Sometimes the relationship between the patient and the therapist is bad. I mean, I've heard that also. Like therapists like ruin people's marriages and different things. Again, I'm not saying across the board, but you also, it's like anything. You have to find a good match. You have to find a good match. But for, at some level, if a person is not able to deal with it, and get away, how to deal with it, it's very, very hard. I'm not gonna say impossible. Very, very hard to function. How are you gonna function in this world with all this baggage? Right? We all have baggage. Everyone has baggage. Right? No question. The question is how you deal with it. Right? How it manifests itself. How you don't allow it to overcome you. But you might need help doing that. Doing it yourself, and all the Torah in the world doesn't necessarily fix it. Which people said, well, that's very depressing. There's not a quick fix. It's not a quick fix. If we live, as we said before, if you live Torah the right way, you live according to the idea. Doesn't mean you don't have an evil inclination. Doesn't mean you struggle with things. But I think you'd be much more healthier, knowing how these things work, how it affects us, and what we need to do to try and fix it. That's Musar. But learning Musar doesn't fix everything. There are people can have, what do you call it? They could have, hormonal issues. They could have all kinds of things that are not, can't be fixed by Torah. Be fixed with medication. Sometimes better, sometimes not. Gotta find the right medication, whatever it is. Whatever it is. But I would say it's important, in order to deal with others, the person has to be able to deal with that, right? At some level. But that will affect how you deal with others also, depending on what it is. And again, this comes with all bad character traits as well. A person gets angry easily. It's one of the worst sins. Got to work on it. It affects a lot of people. Yeah. Affects people closest to us, affects other people. Because they know, you talk to this person, got real anger issues. It's like walking on eggshells. Who wants, you might have to deal with a person like that. Yeah. Not easy. So it's like, they can explode at any point. So, the real problem is if these things don't get fixed at some level, they just get worse. They get a lot worse. And when they get a lot worse, you function less. That's why most people are in Prozac today. It's a lot easier. But it's not dealing with reality, per se. It's good. Gives you an equilibrium. Doesn't, keeps you focused. Doesn't like make you go off the handle too much. Okay, I get it. I don't know if that's what God had in mind. Dealing with ourselves is hard. I can't overemphasize that enough. It's hard. Musar doesn't fix everything. But in general, with all the trials and tribulations we have, if a person's tuned in and a person's focused, I haven't read the story yet. But somebody lost, they're in their 90s already, lost two children. But whatever, I don't even know what. Well, probably different diseases, whatever it was. Yeah, they had buried two children. Yeah. But this person is so imbibed in Torah, so imbued with Torah. They did what Aaron HaKohen did when his two sons died. Aaron. Aaron was quiet. He's quiet. For a parent to bury a child, terrific. No matter what age, terrific. What they have to go through. Yeah. This person has so much Torah inside them, took it as divine decree, It's not like they're not sad. Of course, they're sad. There's no question. But it's things. Part of life. They move on. I'm not saying they're so cold they don't deal with it, and saying it's so painful. It is painful. 100% it's painful. But even if it's painful, there's a Torah way. My Rebbe's mother, give one example. She was a widow at 35 or 37. She had 9 kids. For 3 days, she didn't stop crying during the 7-day mourning period at the beginning. 3 days. So father told her, said, my daughter, 3 days lebechi. 3 days for crying. That's what we see by Avram Avinu. 3 days. That's it. You shouldn't be crying anymore. So she said, are you telling me a halacha or midas chasidus? Is this the law or is this the good thing? They said, no, that's what the halacha is. At that point she stopped. But she was a widow with 9 kids, 35 or 37. Never cried again. But she understood. She understood now. Is that easy? You're talking about a giant of a woman. You can imagine who this woman was. Rebbe's mother, never met her. Right? Blessed memory. Yeah, can imagine who she was. She raised 9 righteous kids, one after the other. His 2 brothers were great in learning. His sisters married great rabbis. I mean, it's like, it's like an unbelievable thing, this family. But she raised 9 kids by herself in the middle of a major war where London was getting bombed like no tomorrow during World War II. Can't imagine. Cannot imagine. Yeah. She had a daughter that lost 2 kids, over the years. So the Torah was imbued in her. You're going to say that's the exception to the rule. Maybe. Maybe you're talking about, giants of people. Okay. Other people would probably crumble. Okay. But, you have to get on with life. But isn't that what the Torah wants? Isn't that the ideal? Come on, that's the ideal. Because that's all the Torah that they learned. And they put it inside of themselves. So again, a person can say, it's not for us. That's too big an ideal. She didn't live that long ago. Yeah. I mean, sorry, she didn't die that long ago. She died, I think, in 1992. So you're talking 30 years ago. More than 30 years ago. Okay. 32 years ago. But talking 150 years ago. We're talking about 1,000 years ago. So even previous generation, they understood. But that's because Torah is steeped inside of them. And it's very, very strong, and there's no compromise. This is a decree. It's a very hard decree. I got to move on. I have to deal with it, but I have to move on. It's one of the stories. I took my Rebbe to Basin once. I was driving to Basin. I went to pick him up. His wife had Alzheimer's in the late 60s. She'd been taken care of by a Filipino. So he said, I have to say goodbye to my wife. He said, wait a minute. She was eating lunch. He was like, Mommy, it's me. She took one look at him. I was there. She took one look at him, smiled, and that was it. She didn't speak. At that point, she wasn't speaking. But imagine being married to someone for 50 years. Her brain's like Swiss cheese, doesn't recognize anybody. Not anybody. But she recognized him for one split second. So he told me, this is one of the things God wants me to work on. This is one of the trials. I have to be strong. I have to overcome it. He goes, okay, let's go. God wants me to work on my emunah, my faith and belief in God. Okay, let's go. I was shaking. See somebody whose spouse has been married for 50 years. She can't speak. She can't do anything herself. That's been taken care of by a caregiver. She recognized him for one split second. I can still see her face now. She recognized him for one split second. And he said, this is a trial. This is what God wants from me. I have to overcome it. I have to work on Musar. I have to work on Amunah. He said, okay, let's go. He didn't blow it off. We think about what a person is, seeing such a thing, not being broken by it. I'd been very sad. 100% he was very sad. Okay. This is the hand he's been dealt with. That's what he's been dealt with. Yeah, there's different reasons why he thinks it happened. Doesn't matter. That's what he said. Because I heard him say it. So I say, wow, that's a giant of a giant. But isn't that what's expected of all of us? We see a horrific situation. Isn't that what's expected? Yes, they were not holding there. The guy from Avinu was? He was. He put that into the world. The actions of our forefathers, right, are a sign for us. He fought against the whole world to give us that ability. Is it easy? Nobody says it's easy. Nobody says it's easy. But what's the bottom line? Bottom line is going to live in this world. That's the bottom line. And sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it feels like it's impossible. And sometimes, yeah, there are tragedies. And it's horrific. But you got to move on. At some level. Some people just get crushed by it. Okay? I'm not here to judge. It's a very, very hard thing. What about growing up in a house where, the parents give you lip service? No one cares what you have to say. They just, whatever. They have their own lives. Yeah? Also pretty sad. Yeah? No real warmth there, no real love there. Because they don't understand what to do anyway. So it's also sad. What are you going to do? Dwell on it? You got to deal with it. 100%. You got to deal with it. So if you look at these people like they're absolutely out of their minds, or if Kaufman would say, they're cotton picking heads, okay, it's easier to deal with. Pain goes away a lot easier when you realize they're mentally insane or retarded, but you can't say that. Yeah, they're mentally insane. Okay. So it's easier to deal with. But you have to have an outlook how to do it. Not so easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Over the years, it's easier. When you realize someone is out of their cotton picking head and they're out of their minds, well, guess what? It's a lot easier to deal with them, one-on-one. And whatever they say, just go bink. It doesn't matter. Does not matter. Right? It doesn't matter. Something about separating from a child to help her child. I don't know. I can't answer that. It's painful. It's absolutely painful. Yeah. And what if a parent decides to separate from a child? Decides to have no connection. That happens. Someone told me that they know of cases where parents disown their kids. I know of cases the other way. Kids disown their parents. It goes both ways. Was it painful? Painful. Well, you know what? I'm not here to judge. Yeah, it's not for me to judge. But I can understand if it's painful. You sometimes have to do it, even if it's painful. Person gets cancer. Yeah, God forbid. Person gets cancer. What do you do with cancer in most cases? Burn it. You burn it out. If you've done everything in your power, well, that person has a child. Done everything in your power, they don't want to have a relationship. So what do? What would someone tell you? What would be the obvious thing they'll tell you? You got to be the bigger person. It's your child, right? True. That easy. You've been spurned. No phone calls. They don't seem to care in any way, shape, or form. Deep down, you never hear from them. For whatever reason. Isn't that painful? Painful. So what do? So some people would say you got to be the bigger person. Okay. What if you're tired of that? What if you can't even bother to pick up the phone to make you want to puke because they just spit you out of your life? So what do? What do you do? It's painful. 100% it's painful. But if you've done everything you can do, some people would say you keep trying no matter what. It's your kid. Okay. But if you keep giving, you get nothing back, you get tired of it. You get tired of it. Don't you want to have a relationship with the kid? Everyone will say, of course. Yeah. Under what conditions? You say any conditions. You don't like one-sided relationship. But it doesn't have to be like on the sickbed before you hear from someone. Yeah. Yeah. Someone eulogized a parent that died. Said, my father always called, check in, see what's going on. I said, what are you doing? So I'm at work and this, that. He's sounding like, okay, parent cared, this, that. That's like going to eulogize it? Said, you idiot, he wanted you to call him. Idiot, he wanted to have a connection, which you never gave him. or you gave it a face value. Idiot, you never picked up the phone to ask how they were doing. Yeah? People say things, they don't necessarily realize the message they're giving over. But the message that I heard of that was, like, why are you calling me? Well, it's obvious why he's calling. It's obvious. Because you never pick up the goddamn phone. You never pick it up. So if you never pick it up, I have to pick up the phone to call you. Parent has to pick up the phone to call a child. Really? Again, some kids will say, that's not who I am. I don't really pick up the phone. Whatever. That's one of my bad character traits. Okay. Learn how to pick up the phone to call a parent. Once a week, even. Just once a week. See how they're doing. What's going on. I get it. People are busy. Okay. Make the effort. A parent doesn't have to call up a kid and ask them how they're doing because you never hear from them. That's not the way it should work. In honoring parents, that's not the way it should work. I'm not saying you have to hear from them every day. Be good, but it doesn't mean you have to. Then what happens? They don't pick up the phone, and you have to pick up the phone. That's how the person saying that's what I do. I'll pick up the phone. Siblings are the same way. Some people are good at calling back, some people are not. The question is, you want to have that relationship? That's the question. Some people say, what am I going to get out of it? What is this? Some people are not doing it to be malicious. Let's say they're lazy. Okay. But what does that tell you? What does that tell you? In some ways, I'm not saying across the board, take this with a grain of salt. In some ways, they're telling you this is not a relationship worthy for me to pick up the phone and call. Now, isn't that sad? Isn't that horrific? Yeah, it is. That's what they're saying. They can say, I'm not good at it, it's not really what I mean. But what's the bottom line? They don't pick up the phone. There's a whole nother schmooze. Whole nother schmooze altogether. But so what do you do? If you want to have a connection, you have to pick up the phone. You have to be the bigger person. If that relationship isn't worth keeping, you're just going to let it go. Because people don't like one-sided relationships. I hear this all the time from people. The person doesn't pick up the phone. That person, they give up. I'd rather say, I'm not going to bother. Okay? Then if someone says, oh, yeah, the person said he's going to go, they don't pick up the phone. What do you want? They don't pick up the phone. Common courtesy. They call, left a message, they never call back. Oh, they're too busy, or this. Or maybe they don't want to speak to them. Okay. Why can't the person get upset? Person has the right to get upset. They're trying to have a relationship. There's no one to talk to, so what do you do? These are good questions. These are good questions. So at some point, a person will say, it's not worth it to me anymore. I make all these phone calls, I make the time, you don't make any effort. Could a person do that? Yes. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Right? Person doesn't feel guilty. There's nothing wrong with it. We got the one-sided relationship. It just shows the other side doesn't really care that much. I don't care what excuses they make. Oh, I'm so busy. I know people that are so busy they don't pick up the phone. What does that tell you? It's a very sad thing. Someone tell me in such a situation. This is the way it's been or whatever. That's this person. Well, still a sibling. You got to pick up the phone. You have to be the bigger person because the other person won't. Don't you think if the other person cared, they would do it? Don't you think? Doesn't it show they really don't care? It's a sad reality. So you got to make a choice. You got, if a person willing to do that, that's the only way. Okay. If a person gets tired of playing the game, is it their fault? No. It's not their fault. They don't want it anymore. It's too aggravating. Because it really hits in the heart. And how they get hit in the heart? What do they tell? What are they saying in general? You're not important to me. And you'll never be important to me. That's hard. That's hard to hear. If they don't say it, that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. Yeah. So you make a choice. Person can make whatever you want. If you think the relationship is so important, then you make the phone call anyway. It doesn't matter. If you're tired of it, nothing comes out of it anyway. So don't bother. That's the question I always get. Is it, should I cut off relationships with family or not? So it depends. I don't know if people do it straight away. It depends. And a lot of times it goes nowhere. There's no point, right? When I hear in the back of my head, someone says, "But you got to be the bigger person." Of course, I got to be the bigger person because the other person's a nothing. It's absolute zero. And they'll never pick up the phone. So of course, you got to be the bigger person. Who said you have to be? Who said you have to be? You make that choice. You want to or not. I can't answer for that. If it's important, you'll do it. If it's not that important to you, you won't do it. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you know the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is, the person doesn't give a lick. They don't care. It's a harsh reality, but that's it. That's it. I've seen it many times. So to me, it's not worth aggravation. Yeah. Whatever you get out of it, get out of it. If you want to, you want to keep in touch, keep in touch. Blood is thicker than water. Okay. And you can't make the person drink. You can wish, they want to be a friend, they want to speak to you, they want to have contact. You can wish it all you want. If they don't do it, they don't do it. It's a harsh reality. So you can say, I don't care, I want to have this relationship. Okay. I'm telling you, if you want to do it, good. If you don't want to do it, it's also good. But people put pressure on it. Come on, it's the family, it's a sibling, it's a this, it's that. You should be in touch. Yeah, you should be. Tell me the other person cares. Tell me the other person cares throughout the year. And show me. All right, you got a point. But still family. You don't have to bang your head against the wall till it bleeds. Yeah? What do you need it for? You got enough aggravation. You got enough aggravation from me. You got enough aggravation. What do you need it for? It's sad. But doesn't mean it's going to change the situation. Doesn't mean that. People have this false sense of security. You get family together, everyone in the same room. Doesn't mean people are happy to see each other. It doesn't mean anyone's going to speak to each other afterwards either. It's a big misnomer. All right, everybody's here. Beautiful. How many people keep in contact after that? Not so much. Some more, some less. Yeah. Is it, I can't answer the question, is it worth it? First, I have to answer the question themselves. I will tell you, a lot of these situations are all sad. They're sad. 100%. 100%. Someone asks, is my children? No, I'm not talking about my kids. I know other people's kids like that. Yeah. It's a sad thing. Like I said, some people are better, some people not, but they make a choice. Some people will keep contact no matter what, even if they don't hear from them. Okay. For a parent, that's a hard thing, but what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do as a parent? Some will make the choice not to have anything to do with them. When they hear from them, they hear from them. And, and others will do whatever they can to keep them in. Okay. I'm not judging either way. I can see both perspectives. Yeah. No one ever wants to lose a child, right? Right? The parent has to be the bigger person in this case. Most likely. But who says the parent wants to do that? Who says they want to do it? It's crazy. But, people do whatever it takes to try and be in contact with their kids, okay? I'm not saying no, there's what to be said for that, 100%. There is what to be said for that. But at the same time, I can understand the other way. Yeah, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop here. I do this every Saturday, 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time. You want to contact me? Contact me on Facebook at Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, OrthodoxConversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos and Q&As, ethics for our fathers, book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com,